Let's start for the second part of the conference, the most difficult because it's after lunch. But we'll have a great panel to keep you entertained and interested. So this second panel will really focus a bit more on EUCC. As we mentioned this morning, 1 year anniversary, also entered, so it was published 1 year ago and entered into force last February 27. So I will call Philippe Blot on stage to moderate this panel on the life cycle of certification from feasibility study to the first worldwide recognized EU certificate. With him on stage, then Rasma Arabi from ATSEC, Ingo Hallen, Head of Division from BSI, Head of Division Certification, Hardware and Product, Rob Wistman, Lead Security Expert European Cybersecurity Certification from RDI, in the Netherlands, Olivier van Nieuws, Senior Standardization Senior Manager at ST Microelectronics, Piotr Krawiecz, Technical Manager from ITSEF NIT here in Poland. Yeah, so you will start, some of you have flashing slides. I will start with Philippe, and I will lead you on this panel.
And everyone, so challenging panel to keep you awake after such a nice lunch. So we'll speak loud to make sure you are kept awake. Can we go to a next slide? So this slide is about explaining the life cycle of how we create candidate schemes, how they get adopted, and so on. There are some changes. So this image is already on the ENISA website dedicated to certification, but there have been some changes introduced. So when life started on Earth, no. So at the beginning of the process, there is a union rolling work program that is supposed to give the direction for the schemes that we should develop. Of course, this union rolling work program is not a standalone document. It's a document that is supported by the Cybersecurity Act, or that supports indeed the Cybersecurity Act. This is a document that is maintained by the Commission and with the support of two groups that we have, the SCCG, stakeholder group, and ECCG's member states. What we introduced, because before, when we started with EUCC, UCS, and later on with 5G, at the origin, there was not so much official feasibility studies that were done under the control of the Commission and ENISA to try and draft what a scheme could be and how it should be addressed in a request. However, there were some studies for the cloud and for EUCC. There were studies from the SOGAES. There was also an ENISA study that has started to be established, and there was a CSP cert study on the cloud. But these were not official studies as we have today, and we have introduced the concept of feasibility study, and this was mentioned this morning through the different talks that we have one on managed security services that will be published soon that will help the Commission to draft the request for a scheme. Then when a scheme when the Commission decides that we should develop a scheme, they send a request to ENISA, and politely, in general, we say, yay, we want to develop a candidate scheme. To do so, we call for an ad hoc working group that will be composed of appointed experts from industry, mostly, that will help ENISA to develop the candidate scheme. In addition to this group, we add the member states from the ECCG or designated by ECCG that want to participate to the design of the candidate scheme. The scheme is drafted, and then there is a public consultation to get feedback, broad feedback, because we have 20 to 25 appointed participants to the ad hoc working group, plus 27 member states possibly, so 50, and of course you can imagine that the scheme has broader impact than just 50 participants. So we go for public consultation, and then we update the scheme, and then we provide it to the member states and commission for an opinion. Then once the opinion is adopted, and if we make changes if need be, but then we pass the scheme officially to commission so that they develop implementing regulation. And then we enter in the magic world of the maintenance of the scheme, because it's not when a scheme is adopted as implementing regulation that the work is done. We need interpretations, we need guidelines, we need supporting documents. As to highlight, under EUCC, there are currently 56 documents that we either develop or maintain, just to give an indication. And we are just at the beginning of the journey. This is the maintenance is something important, okay? It's also a game changer because it was not so much in the CSA as a permanent task. It was more a scheme review after 4 or 5 years, but we had to change the plans, and ENISA received a request to engage into the participation of the EUCC maintenance. And then we have, of course, the certificates, the caps, everything. We already started to celebrate it this morning. So game changers, studies, feasibility studies, and scheme maintenance, important elements. Next.
Okay, thanks, Philippe. So the next speaker, I think, is Olivier, and with slides.
Thank you, Chloe. And so just for Chloe, then my name is Van Nieuwenhuis. Then I know it's not easy to pronounce. So I will provide you an update and mainly the point of view that we have as vendors for the migration from common criteria or SOGIS common criteria to EUCC, but also taking account that we have to migrate to CC 2022. And so I tried to summarize the speech in 3 main points. First, I just remind why do we use common criteria. It's maybe obvious, but need to take the consideration of vendors. As vendors, we are looking to, and we develop products having high security, and we would like to prove that. So having a scheme, an independent one, to prove that we do well our job is really something important for us. But it's not enough to have only one. You have to be recognized by the ecosystem, and I represent one vendors, but our competitors do the same. And this is why we bring values, having all the ecosystem, having a high level of security. But behind that, you need to know that we are selling products, meaning that if we sell, obviously we do money. And the certification is recognized by your customer, but some of customers also require that it's present, and we need to certify the product, and it's present in their tender, meaning that without certification, we cannot sell the product to them. And the last one, few markets require that we need to have certification, mainly, by example, the ID market. But all in all, it means that if we not have the certificate, we cannot sell the product. So it's really important for us to have it. Today, we have a scheme that are working well, the SOGIS one. And there is a lot of certificates that are done today across SOGIS. It means also, if you look the list of CBs, but mainly ITSF, you have a large bandwidth that are able to manage and do the whole certificate. where, and I'm coming to the risk and benefits of migration. Obviously, the benefits, enlarging who recognize the certificate is definitively a benefit, knowing that also some private schemes develop their own method, but recognize CESIP as vendors is really interesting to do one certificate recognized in different dedicated schemes. That's again an advantage. But the risk today that we see, the first one is the availability of the market on mainly from the IT set that are already certified. I know today, and I would like to congratulate who is already certified, but it's still very limited comparing the one that we need to do tomorrow to pass all our certification. Don't forget that for the certification, we have to renew the certificates. We need also to manage new certification. The risk also that we have is migration to Common Criteria 2022. I know that for all of us, it's mainly an upgrade of the certification and some redefined rules. However, in the ecosystem where we are leading and reaching the EL level 6. This level will not be feasible in the new methodology, at least for our product. Don't say it's not feasible at all, but for our product, we are not able to reach it. So we need to do some adaptation and migrate for who is familiar with the multi-assurance level to be able to reach again the level 6. You could say, why don't you downgrade to level 5? I would say maybe, but again, today we reach the level 6, we have marketing behind that, and it's difficult to explain to customer that, you know, the product that I have yesterday, in fact, was less secure than you will have tomorrow, where at the end, what do the developer is in fact increasing each time the product, and it's difficult to prove that on the market. This is why it's really important. And for all this reason, the migration for us is a risk. And what the industry don't like is the uncertainty. Uncertainty meaning that we know what we have, we don't know what we will have tomorrow, and during the past, we may have some unknown, needed clarification, and all this unknown part is a risk for us that we don't like, because the customer expects the product at a date that we need to fit. I would like just to conclude that, and I would like to thank all the ecosystem to not define everything by themselves, but there is some discussion between all the ecosystem and mainly between authorities and industrial. And this leads to have an anticipated migration. Typically, one of the examples that we can do is having the knowledge of migrate and include LCFLR2 into the development of the site and site certification, facilitate the migration of certificates through EUCC. That's my point to conclude the three topics that I would like to highlight for the migration. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Olivier. That's very good to get this feedback from the market, indeed. Now we'll have the other side, because we'll have Piotr explaining how it is on the ITSEF side.
Good afternoon. My name is Piotr Krawiec. I'm technical manager in ITSF in National Institute of Telecommunications here in Warsaw. And I would like to briefly present our way to EUCC. Here. Thanks. Polish evaluation and certification scheme based on common criteria was created as a part of R&D project financed by a national agency. Our scheme consists of 3 research institutes, NASK Institute as a certification body, and 2 institutes, including our National Institute of Telecommunications as ITSFs. And our scheme became authorized participant in CCRA and SOG-IS MRA in 2022. Our laboratory, our ITSF, is accredited in Polish Center of Accreditation since April 2021, and since then our scope of accreditation is constantly going up to finally meet the EUCC requirements. We started with accreditation up to EAL 4 level to meet SOGIS and CCRA requirements. Then we searched on the market specific types of products that are in line with EUCC provisions, and then we enhanced our accreditation to AWA1.5 for these types of products. Next we confirmed our capabilities for these products by performing evaluations based on two protection profiles. Protection profile for qualified signature creation devices and for digital tachographs. And the last step was pilot evaluation, which covers all missing components required to fulfill state-of-the-art documents for selected technical domain to be authorized ITSF. And as a result, in December 2024, we submitted our application to Polish Center of Accreditation, and we are ready to be accredited EUCC ITSF, and at this moment we are only waiting for Polish Center for Accreditation to do their job. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot. So now, after seeing behind the scene what needs to be done on the vendor side, on the ITSF side to become accredited, I will let Rob explain how the EUCC certificate can shine on the worldwide stage.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. Welcome to this presentation. You can see the title, The Practical Approach for CCRA Recognition of EUCC Certificates. I assume that you all know what CCRA is, because otherwise it will be boring. For me, it's a kind of a story. You could even say it's a fairy tale. I wouldn't recommend telling it to your children, but on the other hand, they fall asleep very quickly. But as a spoiler alert, like every fairy tale, it has a happy ending. It started already in 2019, where the Cybersecurity Act actually saw the daylight. It was endorsed, it was published. And then in the international community, in the CCRA, we became aware, well, something is going on in Europe. And I'm not telling that as a European member state representing the Netherlands, but it was a common feeling in the whole CCRA, the global community. And they thought, well, something is going on. We need to do something to see and to maintain also the global recognition which was driving the whole common criteria community over the world, especially for the global players. So we already investigated, based on the Cybersecurity Act, that there are a couple of differences in approaches. Even though the CSA and also the first European common criteria scheme was established based on what we already had established in Europe under the SOGAS umbrella, there still were some differences in approaches. So those were investigated, and also, based on those, the consequences were identified. And then, if you know the consequences, you also need to look at solutions, and the solutions were several, but only one seemed viable, at least at that time, for the short term. Well, the conclusion, at least from that investigation, was if we do nothing, the whole system will break down, and that would lead that the EU participants issuing EUCC certificates could no longer participate under the CCRA, because there were that many differences in compliancy between the way of operating within Europe and how the CCRA wants to operate. So we had to do something. Well, the most obvious one that was already in the EUCC implementing regulation, there is an Article 44 that deals with mutual recognition, but there were some differences. First of all, Article 44 is, you can read that as a trade agreement with also some legal consequences, while the CCRA and also in the past the SOGAS MRA, it's a non-binding, so not legal binding arrangement. And it is a multilateral arrangement, why Article 44 more or less reads as the Commission wants to establish bilateral agreements with third parties. So we then decided, well, even though it's a viable approach, because everything is already there, or at least the requirements are already in there, to come up with mutual recognition agreements, even though they are bilateral, it was still considered to be a long-term solution at that time, because those trade negotiations normally take many years. And especially if you have to have trade agreements with multiple participants. So from the CCRA perspective, it was clear that we had to find some, whether it's intermediate, or at least we wanted to have some working solution to make sure that we could continue in Europe issuing CCRA certificates. One of the benefits is the CCRA would be in charge, because the CCRA could then interpret their way of working, which is defined in the Common Criteria Recognition Agreement or Arrangement. I'm sorry, but we are responsible for that as a CCRA community, while only the European participants in that CCRA community, they only had to take care of whatever comes out fits within the legal framework that we have in Europe, being the CSA and the EUCC implementing regulation. So that was the approach that we were looking at, looking for some short-term solution. And these are the elements from what came out of it. First item is very clear. The governmental organizations that are representing their nation or their country in the CCRA should be those organizations that are also the NCCA. So that's the one thing. That was quite easy because most of the European participants already had their NCCA in the CCRA. And then the second one, and that's a more important one, that is that those governmental organizations, being the CCRA participant, shall always provide oversight of certificates issued under their responsibility. So that means that now, under the CCRA, it's also possible to have commercial CBs operating and issuing certificates, but under the CCRA, they can only do so with the CCRA logo on it after the NCCA or the organization that is performing the NCCA functions did some oversight. And if that's all okay, then an EUCC certificate can also have the CCRA logo attached to it. And the third item, that's an obvious one, the CCRA participant will remain responsible for the verification of the requirements, and that's part of the oversight that needs to be performed. But we have a solution, and that was developed, but it's not in place. So we had to follow two approaches. The one approach is CCRA internally, because we had the proposal on how to work that out, but it needs to be formalized in what we now call a policy paper. Well, that policy paper has been drafted and has also been agreed by the CCRA Management Committee. So that's the committee that is responsible for the operation of the CCRA. And that is endorsed, and it's going to be published, I would say, anytime. It's already, it's available, it needs to be cleaned up, and then you will find it on the CCRA portal with all the details of what I just present here. But we also had the other track. We also need to make clear to the European Commission that the way of operating is not violating any European regulation, especially the CSA and the EU and the EUCC. Because performing additional oversight at the level substantial, that's not part of EUCC. At level substantial, CBs can issue certificates without any involvement of their NCCA, only after issuing certificates. And the NCCA has a role. So we also, at least Italy and the Netherlands, and later with the support of France, drafted a paper based on what the CCRA community already had. But the focus was on explaining the legal implications and how it actually would work for the European participants. The document has also been drafted, has been submitted to the European Commission, and we were very happy that in January, it was February, sorry, the Commission said that they accept that paper and also the approach described in it, and that they see not any legal obstructions. So that means that the approach that was developed under the CCRA on the coexistence, that has been accepted, not only from the CCRA itself, but now also from a legal perspective from the European Commission. And the only thing that we still need to finalize are the discussions on harmonization. We have, Philippe mentioned, 56 documents. Also under the SOGS, we had documents that were shared also with the CCRA community, and that's something that we would like to continue doing. And the way in how we are going to do that, so how we set up a relationship with the CCRA and the EUCC, maintenance organization, that's something that still needs to be discussed and finalized. But the intention is to work together. And it also means that the participating nations in the CCRA, if they issue an EUCC certificate and they operate according to the process that I just described, they can now, from now on, they can also issue CCRA certificates. And with that, I see that I am way over time. I want to conclude this fairy tale with the usual ending, and they lived happily ever after. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, everyone, for this insight presentation. So, I guess, Rob, just to bounce on your last point, that the conditions that will apply to what the NCCA shall review will be described into the CCRA paper, right?
Yes, there will be. Is it on? No.
Let us.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that paper will be published on the Common Criteria portal. At the
Get the mic.
Okay, at the EUCC, also the document that Italy, Netherlands, and also France wrote for the legal analysis by the Commission is also circulated. That also gives the description on how to work. So it's available, maybe not yet for the public, but yeah, the CSRA policy that will be available soon.
Great, thanks for that. So I guess Olivier, who is fond of changes, not so much, will appreciate the new procedure to get CCRA certificates, but we'll come maybe later to that. Transition from SOGAS to EUCC, are there, we already talked a bit this morning. Rasmus, so you went through the process, you have an ITSF plus a CB. Any tips for the concurrents, for the guys that want to do the same? Any difficult situation, if any, and any advice to get out of these difficult situations?
Okay. Thank you, Philippe. So actually, before that, I would like to kind of go on the changes or risks, right? That is what we kind of are describing. So I think we as a human beings, we like to do things in the same way. And we don't kind of not always embrace the changes that are there. So I think all these changes for the ITSEFs and the CBs and for the vendors, those are difficult. Why those are difficult? Because they kind of introduce uncertainty. They put us basically on a thin ice sometimes where they know how to kind of react to the situations. So I think in that sense, these changes sometimes are necessary, which is really good. And I also for the changes regarding the certificates, what Rob Huisman has just presented, actually it kind of calmed me down a little bit. Now I'm happy to hear that there's at least the CCRA mark question is being resolved and there is a solution. So that is really good. I think for the ITSEFs and for the CBs, the point is that, I mean, start early. So as I already discussed and said, so I mean, we started as an ITSEF lab. We have an extensive experience, worked for 20 years, more than that in different schemes. For the CB, we started 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, we started with the resources, we started with the processes, we started with the application. The first time actually we applied, we wrote our own scheme because the EUCC was not even available at the time. After basically 2 years after we have started, we got that certification. And then last year, exactly 1 year ago, we applied for the EUCC accreditation as well. So I think starting early is really the tasks. What else I have to say? I mean, there are a lot of challenges really, both with the CC 2022 and in general, also with the certification. So for me, if I wanted to name just one thing, I think it's the protection profiles. So we as a software company, we are using usually the protection profiles, those that have not been used in a SOGIA, so to say, so those are not smart guys protection profiles. Here we have customers that come to us and they say, well, we'd like to do a certification with you. How can we approach that? Now, some protection profiles already comply with the older CC version, so CC 3.1. It potentially need to be kind of phased in into the newer one, or basically done with both the CCRA and the EUCC. You have different transition times as well there. So this is something that is very important. Also, I mean, the customers, they don't like changes. They want to do everything in the same way. So just yesterday, we had a kickoff meeting for the first EUCC project. It's for a customer that we have worked with for 5 or 6 years ago. So during the kickoff meeting, what they kept saying, we want to do exactly the same. We don't want to change anything at all. And this is the best solution would be that their certificate would end up on the CCRA portal or the CC portal. That was kind of, they were coming back to this all the time. So I think, yes, changes are good, but then sometimes they present also risks. And handling them early, I think that's a good way to do that.
Okay, thanks. For for the transformation of BSI to being accredited under EUCC, did it take as well 3 years?
No, but while you were asking for our biggest challenges, and as BSI is a big scheme, producing a low 3-digit figure of output every year. One big challenge was to keep the business running. I'm happy to see some of our customers in the audience, maybe online as well. And of course, our aim was to serve them as good and timely as they were used to be served. And at the same time, as you pointed out, entering the maintenance phase required still a lot of analysis. What do we have to change? Which documents that form the basis for most of our work, especially in my group, are transposed? What are changes? And all this required a lot of work exactly of those senior experts that are most valuable for complex certification procedures that we are quite famous for at BSI, I believe. And so managing the resources, assigning priorities, maybe cutting short some possibilities to provide standby certifiers. So the COVID epidemic hit us hard as everybody else, and maybe this time we had to let our customers suffer as well, more than in the former times. And this was a big challenge for us, especially due to the reasons that Olivier mentioned. Well, of course, I think for our customers are the same, and we don't provide them with the information required. We put them out of the market in certain circumstances, and so it is very important to produce our certificates timely and as required. So I can only give CAPS a good advice to plan for resources and take this in account when you change the overall process. And of course, we are a big scheme, we are part of many groups, and of course we wanted to give input into the maintenance phase as well, and the world doesn't stop.
So just one question. You said keep the business running, and also considering the fact that some clients of Olivier may require a certificate, and maybe not a EUCC certificate, but just a certificate, a CC certificate. What is the current strategy? Is it to conclude the current projects that were started under SOGAS with a SOGAS certificate, or to conclude them possibly with a EUCC certificate?
Our current strategy is to conduct the SOGAS certificates as long as they can be finished well enough before next February. And I believe we will transpose some procedures that we will start at the moment. And of course, we will start any new procedures, meaning new recertifications and all this for EUCC, as it is such a difficulty for us to conclude to do all the certification procedures in time. We have to be careful with our resources and with the processes that do not have to be delayed.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. Any difficulty you had considering the specific case of the Dutch system, which is based on prior approval? Is the move to EUCC a game changer for your ecosystem?
A game changer? Hopefully not. It is a change, that certainly. But difficulties, it's all relative. We are happy that we already have a scheme, a national scheme in place that is issuing common criteria certificates. So then transforming that into EUCC ecosystem, it's a challenge, but it's doable. It's doable compared to the ones that have to set up from scratch. We already have an ecosystem. We have CAPS. We have CBs, ITSEFs. Unfortunately, they are not here on the podium this morning. They are still in the process of being accredited. Sorry for that. But that's something we can easily accommodate. Our intention is for the developers to make the transition as smooth as possible. It's also good to know that we as NCCA are responsible for EUCC, while we have a different organization that's responsible for the national scheme. So that also means that transitioning certificates, so yes, national certificates into EUCC is a little bit, I wouldn't say difficult, but it's a different process because they have to reapply. But we do that in conformance with the EUCC regulation that says that national certificates, if they need to be renewed, they have to undergo a review, and that has to be processed under EUCC. And that's what we're going to do. And of course, wherever possible, we're going to make reuse of the work that has been done under the national schemes, as far as it is allowed.
Any recommendation from those member states that would like to put the system of prior approval in place as how they should start doing that, how they develop the competence of the NCCA, the competence of the CB, what is the interplay between the two, and any difficulty or any recommendation you would highlight in this one, because it's something a bit new for the ecosystem. I mean, it's not new for you, but it's a possibility now broadly offered by EUCC, and I guess everyone is curious about how to proceed, possibly.
Of course, we are happy with the system. We are operating this kind of approach since we started with our national scheme. That was in 2004. So we have more than 20 years experience in it. And we did use this approach of just monitoring and having commercial CBs issuing the certificates, because in the Netherlands we have the policy that government should not do what industry can do, sometimes even better. That also has the benefit is that from a governmental perspective, we have far less need for resources, and that also means that we can respond quickly to market changes, because most of the work is done by commercial entities like ITSEFs and CBs. The only challenge you have is, when you set up something, is what is the market? How can you make money? That does not only apply to ITSEFs, but also then to commercial CBs. They need to make money. And that's the biggest challenge, is find the right market, find the developers that are willing to invest and in a CC certification project. So I would say that is the biggest challenge. And once you have that, also with the Polish scheme, they have set up quite recently. Maybe you should ask them how to gain the market.
Okay, thanks for that. Olivier, so you highlighted already some changes related mostly to CC 2022, not so much to EUCC when it comes to the EAL6. Everyone discovered with fear and what the hell is EAL6 versus a multi-level security target that would be partially EAL5 and 6 or whatsoever. So any big move apart from CC 2022 which comes with EUCC, for example, vulnerability management? Is it something you had to reinvent to comply with EUCC, or is it something that was natural from the beginning?
You highlight one point That's still, don't say difficult to talk, but just to highlight one thing with the migration to EUCC, to explain a little more first. For us, migration to EUCC, I would say, again, it's a good move and it's going to a good direction. What we just may be afraid is the timing might be a little more too much aggressive regarding availability of all the caps, availability all of the document, and all processes available for everyone to start and to know where you are going to. That's where we see with EUCC. I highlighted highlighted for the migration for CC 2022 that are for us as manufacturer, it's a bigger change than migration to EUCC. So now the question to vulnerability handling. That's the topic where I don't say we always have frequent with authorities regarding the way how to manage vulnerabilities. It's true that in principle, with high security level, you avoid to have weakness. That's, I would say, it seems obvious, but okay. In principle, it's the principle to have high security robustness. In principle, you have no or very few vulnerabilities. Then, usually, you manage as an exception. It's not something that every day you have a vulnerability in your product and you have to manage. Then, usually, it's something that we manage carefully and would say case by case. Here, the process is changing a little because you request more and to be in more process where it's something that is more difficult to implement in the company and mainly to react in the time that is required today. That's the main challenge that we have. We obviously try to be in conformance with the law and what is required, obviously, but we believe it's still challenging, and especially in case of we have really an incident that have to solve. Don't forget that we have like a tree of certificate, meaning that if we have an issue somewhere, it may happen in other case. But in this case, we need to recertify all our product. And even if it's a small thing, just not because we don't want to do the job ourselves, we fix it. But the time to recertify all our product, and I'm not joking, taking 1.5 years. Then the question here, I would say, is even if we do our best, we try to do our best, we are limited with bandwidth of ITSAF or CBs. I don't want to blame you, but it's just a reality. And that we need to find a way to combine the wishes of authorities and what is feasible on the market.
Thanks for this very important feedback. I mean, one immediate recommendation, maybe also because I remember then when we established the draft EUCC, there was a recommendation from the group to have maybe a longer transition period than 1 year for the scheme to be operational. But of course, I mean, we had this year because the first year was dedicated to the caps. To be accredited, authorized, and notified. And I guess everyone now knows the difference between the three terms. Otherwise, I will be not so happy. But of course, it took some while as well for us to establish the conditions for accreditation, authorization. So it was not a full year that could be occupied to do so. But I guess this is important trigger if the requirements or precisions related to accreditation and authorized are not immediately available, then the transition periods that would apply for the scheme to enter into force should be highly reconsidered, maybe a bit longer than 1 year, so that this transition can allow the continuity of service. But EUCC is a bit of different animal as compared to other schemes because there was already a huge community doing certification under EUCC with agreed, harmonized procedures and so on, which might be different case for EUCS, EU5G, the wallet. I mean, the wallets, the national schemes will be defined. So, I mean, the EU scheme probably will have easier transition. but for other schemes it might be a different case. Piotr, any additional feedback you would like to give beyond the presentation you made on what was a challenge and how to avoid to face the same difficulty?
From our perspective, from perspective of young ITSF, such transition is less a challenge and more an opportunity, because I would like to point out that public and private certification bodies are emerging in other European countries, European Union countries that has not been in SOGIS, and it means greater flexibility in the use of ITSF services from other countries. And at this substantial level, it is already happening, and we as ITSF already have such contacts, and we think that it is not a challenge but opportunity for us.
Good feedback. So a second question to you all is we have EUCC, we have to maintain EUCC, we have to deliver accreditation, authorization, we have to deliver certificates, to update the certificates, to handle vulnerabilities and so on. Good. Is that good enough, EUCC, as the scheme for ICT products, or do we need more for the assessment of products? There was a presentation in the previous panel that says, well, for IoT products, for more commercial products that are not yet in the radar of CC evaluations, there will be CRA assessments possibly, but with the possibility to have a EU scheme that would support that. Is it a good idea, or should we just set the EUCC and see how it works before we engage into any further development of additional schemes related to products? Who wants to start? Olivier or
Rasma, please first.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that the EUCC is, looking into the CRA, right? So we have the CRA, we have a long list of products there, we have all these different categories. So we see that for critical products, EUCC is a good answer. So we know that, right? So there are basically a few products that are listed there, and we know that we can do EUCC. Now there are also these important products. So say firewalls, sure, those have been evaluated according to CC before. This is something that we can continue doing. I have my other favorite category, it's baby monitors. Those are listed there in the list. And also door locks, how do they map to the EUCC? Can we do that? Can we do a CC evaluation of such a product? Can a vendor somehow justify the cost that the CC evaluations of such a product would cost? And I think the answer is no. So I think that basically what we would need to have is some kind of a more lightweight scheme to do that. Now for IoT products and for consumer products, there are a lot of different private schemes already. And that is also part of a problem there, because there is a lot of fragmentation. So you have some schemes that are already recognized internationally. So I know that there is, for example, Singaporean scheme that is also recognized in Finland and in Germany. Then there are other schemes that, for example, that are also developed. So the new one is the mobile device certification scheme. So MDR Cert was created, for example, in the GSMA working groups there. So there are a lot of different schemes, and I think then we need to also think about, should we create a new scheme, or should we extend the schemes with the requirements, right? And actually I would go for the latter. So also there are quite a few private schemes that are introducing different mappings to requirements in the CRA, mappings to the requirements in the RED, because I'm sure that the, say, vendors, they are not just keen on certifying the same product with different labs, paying extra fees for certification, but I mean, they would like to do kind of one certification, or at least one testing, and then get multiple certificates if that is possible. So I think definitely the consumer devices, this is something that we should look into. And also those, I mean, looking from the European perspective, those that are kind of listed in the, that we know that are listed in the CRA.
Thanks. Olivier, you wanted to give the point of view of a vendor.
Yes, I'm mainly going in the same way of Rasma, but just to highlight first, if you look common criteria in general, and I took as basis the figure that ENISA provides each year, if you look, you see that most of the certificates target around 5 and 4. Few 3, and more or less 1 and 2 is not existing. I'm simplifying. It means that the market is not ready to migrate or to use EUCC. That would say what say industrial. It's true that for products, and mainly IoT products, there is some new scheme and private scheme that are coming. It's good that it's improved the security that you have of the product in general. It's always good. Where I would like to highlight and be managed carefully is, don't forget you have a supply chain. It's fine to test a final product, but when you have a supply chain, usually, obviously, you use a chip at the end. I would say, I preach for myself, but obviously, you know that if you have a product, 100% is running on hardware. So the hardware is everywhere, and you cannot ask to check and to verify the hardware according to each different scheme. It's just infeasible. Don't forget, it's always the same chips used in different device. So having a united scheme, that's a good thing. Like you have for EUCC and in Europe, it's very good things. However, I think that EUCC have to almost stick and feel for high security level. For the intermediate, you see that it exists, and some independent and private scheme appears to be used generally to prove the security, especially for the chip, the component, and I would say the intermediate or the basis part, that are not securing the product itself, but providing the bricks that's securing and where you're able to rely on it. And I think it's the way that we need to investigate, and just by example, the one that are used today is CZIP, but it's a way to prove it, and maybe to either rely on it or inspire it might be a good way to enlarge what we have in Europe.
Who wants to react first on CZIP versus EUCC or the possibility? So, I mean, CZIP has advantages, I guess, but do we need another scheme, or do we just need to expand EUCC to cover other methodologies, because the conditions under which you want the CAPs to be accredited are more or less the same? And so any reaction on this?
So yeah, from the BSI point of view, we investigated CZIP, I think, up to a certain degree. And we see a lot of beneficial points in that. But from our point of view, it would be the better idea to integrate that and improve the current existing standards, due to the fact that, as far as I know, CZIP actually relies on one single CB and two CBs, yeah. But harmonizing this throughout Europe will, from our point of view, result in a very similar work to running the common criteria scheme. And therefore, we would propose to use the existing structures, the existing procedures, the existing working groups, and all that to improve this common criteria by the good ideas that are, in any case, contained within CZIP, instead of establishing a new scheme.
Rob, maybe?
Yeah. It's a difficult question, whether we need additional product certification schemes. Because first of all, the common criteria scheme is a horizontal scheme. So in principle, every cybersecurity product can be certified under EUCC. But at the same time, we also know for various reasons that common criteria is slow and expensive. That's the notion that everyone has of it. So yes, there is a need for something that is faster, but I don't think it should be a horizontal scheme, because if you have two horizontal schemes, that means that product manufacturers will use the one which is the cheapest and the fastest. So then you have two competing schemes, and I don't think that's the way to go. If you say about vertical schemes, like an IoT scheme, that's something that might be meaningful. So then you divide the market into verticals, and for a specific vertical, coming up with a dedicated scheme that circumvents all the drawbacks from the horizontal common criteria scheme. I think that's a good solution. There has been discussions about whether or not CESIP is mentioned, but we also have the FITSEM standard that can also be a product scheme. But the same, the FITSEM scheme is also a horizontal scheme that has a different approach, but they claim also to achieve the high level, the high assurance level. So that means if we establish that as a European scheme, it's competing with common criteria. I'm not sure whether that's a wise decision. So we have to divide the market. So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is how to develop or what to do with commercial schemes. We have CESIP, but we also have the experience under 5G with the schemes that are operated by the GSMA. It proved difficult to use commercial schemes in a European ecosystem. You know that cybersecurity certification is all around trust, and trust on commercial schemes that is coming from the market. We cannot say with legislation, you have to trust a commercial scheme. You could do so, but then you need to establish supervisory activities. It has to be monitored, supervised by a governmental entity. And that's something which has never been researched. But I think that would be a way forward if we want to use commercial schemes.
Okay, thanks for that. Piotr, any thoughts on setting a dedicated vertical scheme for baby monitors?
I represent National Institute of Telecommunications.
Okay,
so
monitoring babies is through
one answer.
Communication.
One answer naturally comes to my mind. The most urgent European scheme to be prepared is EU 5G, considering mobile networks as a critical infrastructure for a modern economy and society.
And you're right, because indeed this is a typical example where we still assess products with NASK possibly that are for a vertical which is telco domain. So and we picked a different methodology based on different feedback from industry, GSMA and 3GPP and so on. So it's indeed a very good example. So we have 5-6 minutes left. 16. Oh my God.
16.
What happened? You sure, Chloe?
No.
No, you are not sure.
6.
6. Okay. More or less between 6 and 16. So you were mentioning protection profiles, Rasma. So we'll have the challenge of monitoring the progress of the transformation of protection profiles. There are many reasons for PPs to be changed. There is the reason of complying with the EUCC possibly. There is a 2022 version of the common criteria. Most of the PPs were based on previous versions. They might be PQC, Why not? We know that the common protection profile, the collaborative protection profiles are under change to reflect the need to implement PQC. So it might be something also that will trigger the need to change the PPs. And by the way, we had the last week a meeting of the crypto subgroup of the ECCG, which made a review of ACM 1.4, which is a document provided by the SOGAS working group on crypto that comprises PQC mechanism guidelines. And we hope that we will be able to have a recommendation at EU level on this document. So once first has to be published by the SOGAS, and then we will make some minor changes to that based on our review. But it's good news that at EU level we'll have guidelines as to handle PQC into products that aim to be certified. And the fourth reason, of course, of the changes, so first EUCC, then 2022 CC, and then PQC possibly, and then, of course, CRA. So we have published on the ENISA website dedicated to certification report that I invite you to read when you have a bit of time, because it's 100 pages, so a flight will do. When flying back home, please use the time to do so. It's a report that highlights how the essential requirements of the CRA could be interpreted as SFRs and SARs, so functional and assurance requirements of the EUCC, and possibly also which other activities should be done when defining a security target, and so on. And we will, of course, call for piloting the application of this report so that the PPs can be updated to possibly embark some of the requirements of the CRA. I'm very precautious. I'm not talking about presumption of conformity, because presumption of conformity will be installed differently, and afterwards it will be a separate activity. But at least to prepare for this possibility, we invite to do so. So, around how many PPs do we have to change, and how to monitor that, how to make sure that it's happening? Who wants to start? Rob, you want to? So, again, the other option is while you're taking the flight, not only you read the paper, but you update a PP. Huh? This is another option. So, Rob, you want to do that during your flight?
Yeah, no, certainly not. I have other things to do in my during my flight. No, I want to react first on what you say. We have to update PPs. If it is the wider community, that's okay.
We is a big one.
We is a big one, and as NCCA, we think it's up to the market to update their PPs. We set the rules on how to use PPs, and if the owners of those PPs see no need to update their PPs, it's up to them. If they want their PP to claim more or less conformance with the CRA requirements, we encourage them to do so, but we cannot force them. So we can recommend, encourage, but we cannot force them. Also, you have to keep in mind that there are more or less two types of PPs. PPs that are developed by the industry, like the smart card protection profile, the Java card protection profile, they are owned by industry. And at the same time, we also have protection profiles, which sometimes are also called harmonized standards, developed by Sensenelec or ETSI. Most notably the ones that are related to the HSM and also in the qualified signature creation devices. Those are developed also as a response to a request from the Commission. So for those that are related to, I would say, European legislation, whatever, whether it's digital tachograph or whatsoever, if they want to develop, or Sensenelec develops a standard in the form of a protection profile, then it's up to them to update it. But it could be encouragement from the Commission, maybe with support of ENISA, to tell the Sensenelec that their existing protection profiles are in need of being updated. Luckily, in the amendment of the implementing regulation, EUCC implementing regulations, we already have some provisions in the transition, which now states that we can continue using those protection profiles that relate to European legislation, but that's just a bandage. Those PPs need to be updated as well. But someone else has to tell the owner or the developer to do so.
Okay, so this conference is already a call. So here and online, if you have your ears open, please think about updating your PPs. Please. Ingo, you want to support that?
Yes, I want to support that because I think we have, as a transition from 3.1 to 2022, a very effective cooperation with industry in place. So if I remember correctly, they had an overview which PPs need to be updated, which time schedule is required, what are the market needs, what is the industry needs. And I found this very, very efficient to draft a list, prioritize, and then work on this list, especially with ownerships and especially also the costs. Update is not just updating a PP and writing some kind of additional security functional and assurance requirements in it, but it requires certification. We've got some applications happily at BSI for the update of important PPs. And all this work takes some time, especially with respect to certification of the protection profiles. And this brings me to another point that may refers to your former question regarding the CRA requirements concerning processes and life cycle. I read your report, and there were many suggestions how to integrate those life cycle requirements into common criteria. I have to say, not all of my colleagues were fascinated by these expectations, and maybe this is something that needs some more insight into it, whether this proposition of ENISA is really feasible, what kind of effects it has, and how we can conduct certifications with this approach, or whether a different approach might be more advisable. I can say at the German scheme and the approval scheme, we have some other approaches in place to monitor life cycle and secure development life cycle activities of developers. And I believe this is regarding the requirements of the CRA and the ambition of the Commission to point out more reliable supply chains and life cycle management, where we also have to think about.
Okay, I see Chloe making some eyes and telling me we should come to an end. But shortly then, Olivier, ready to update PPs?
So here I have good news.
Cool.
Here I just not answer directly as vendors, but as you know, I'm part of several organizations that have or hosted PP. So in all organizations where I'm involved, the process to start the update of the PP is already started. So we know and going in your direction. It's true that the industry provide PP, develop PP, we have to maintain, and we take our responsibilities to do it. We start the process, it's just long. As mentioned in the beginning, we are looking for certainty and avoid uncertainty. This is why, according to each organization, if you need to involve our modification regarding CC 2022, usually we do in two steps. First, migration to this CC 2022. And the second, it's combination, if not done, between EUCC and CRA, because for the industry, CRA, it's still uncertainty today. And so we are looking for, this is why we integrate already in the plan the migration and inclusion, what is needed, even if we don't know, but in the plan, to include what is needed for Syria.
Piotr and Rasmus, are you ready to certify new PPs?
Ready? Yes. But we are not.
What did I ask? Certify. Yeah, to assess, sorry, or certify.
Evaluate. But we are not owner of any PP, so I have no more to add in this step.
No, I mean, definitely it's possible to certify PPs, that we know. That sometimes is also a requirement. There are also rules about how PPs should be certified and how, for example, the certification bodies, special private ones, need to talk to the national NCCAs as well, right? So, I mean, there are rules for that, so absolutely. The only thing is that, as we know, when you update the PP, usually you introduce errors. Then you need to correct the errors, and then potentially you need to recertify the PP. So this is also something, it's not really a one-time job that you kind of just updated the PP and now it is perfect. It is really this maintenance of the PP and then continued certification. I think it's really kind of a problem there, because it's just adds a lot of work. But other than that, yes, of course.
Good. Many thanks to you. I hope you learned a bit around about how to move to EUCC, what are the challenges and the recommendations, what EUCC can do and what other schemes could do supporting maybe more verticals, as mentioned by Rob as an example, and also by a Polish colleague on 5G, the strategy with regards to PP, the complicated story it is. It's not like redrafting a paper. I thank you all for your participation and wish everyone to continue discussions after that during the breaks. Many thanks.
Thanks a lot. That was a way to invite you to. So the next session is actually hybrid, so we will allow Raluca Stefaniuc, Deputy Head of Unit of the Cybersecurity and Digital Privacy Policy Unit at DigiConnect, to join online, and with Mateusz Baliak, policy officer in the same unit at the Commission, we will be able to take your feedback. So this session really is a presentation and a Q&A session on the evaluation of the Cybersecurity Act. Good afternoon, Raluca. So feel free to ask questions.
Hello, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And feel free to ask your questions online. I will be able to see them. And on site, of course, we have the mic coming in. I'll let Mateusz start.
Yes, I believe actually that Raluca would do some introduction, and then, of course, we would be very happy to hear your feedback. I mean, as you can see, this session is a little bit different than the other ones. For one, there's not so many of us here on the stage, so it is more about us asking the questions. I wanted to hear what you have to say. So, but with that, back to you, Raluca.
Thanks, Mateusz. So first of all, I think I share a slide or not
yes, we can see the slide.
As a background. As a background for our discussions, but first to say that I'm happy to be here online and have this discussion with you. I really wish I were there with you. I hear only wonderful things about what's going on in Warsaw now, so I'm a bit jealous that I was not able to attend that in person. I apologize for that. I hope that on next occasion, for sure, I will not miss it again to see you in person there. So as Matos was saying, I will just make a short introduction about where we are to just explain a bit what is the planning on the Commission side when it comes to Cybersecurity Act revision, and in particular what we are looking ahead for the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework, and then really looking forward to hearing from you also your views on that, since we are still with this ongoing process on looking ahead of what one can improve for the certification framework. So as you heard already, actually from our Director General in the morning with his recording, and you have seen in the Commission work program, we are working on a forthcoming revision of the Cybersecurity Act, and that would include, of course, considerations regarding potential improvements of the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework. You have seen in the Commission work program that there is a digital package foreseen for Q4 of this year. This entails a revision, as I said, of the Cybersecurity Act, but also a simplification of the cybersecurity legislation in a package. This is also one of the objectives, as a whole objectives actually for the current Commission, of simplification of legislative framework, and in particular for this package we will be also looking at simplification of cybersecurity legislation across the board, horizontal, sector specific, and this is also an important aspect to bear in mind when one looks at CSA revision and the objectives that are to achieve, at least on policy side, on that as well, to ensure a simpler framework that would encourage better compliance and implementation, and also give the necessary tools to businesses to comply very efficiently with cybersecurity objectives. When it comes with to the cybersecurity certification framework, well, we are here finally with the first EU cybersecurity certification scheme, EUCC, and that was also and will be part also of the discussions that you'll be having together. So a lot of lessons, to be learned also of how the first EU cybersecurity certification scheme went in the preparation throughout the process, the outcome, and our first certificate. So to see also how implementation goes. So one aspect that one should really consider when looking at potential revision of this framework is definitely learning from what we have seen from the first European scheme that has seen the light, but also from the processes which are ongoing with a number of other candidate schemes right now, and what kind of improvements one could see already from these ongoing processes that we can look at in the future. And if I may, the overall objective of what we're looking at the revision, of course, is to make this framework more efficient, more agile, while reaching the cybersecurity objectives that we have in mind. But just to set a bit, the discussions, and of course, looking forward to hearing from you also additional points, would just mention some aspects that we might be looking at with this revision, and where your views would be particularly appreciated, and your thoughts on how the current framework works, and what could one improve in the future. So one aspect in relation to the current framework is the clarity of the scope and coverage of the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework. These are aspects that one was confronted with also in preparation of certain candidate schemes, how clear it is, what kind of risks are covered by the current certification framework, what would one can look in the future to improve that, to provide more clarity and more precision maybe, and what aspects one would consider in relation to clarifying the scope even further of the certification framework. Another aspect on which might be looking at with this process concerns the process as a whole. meaning that how efficient, how fast that can be, what stages could one reconsider if all stages of preparation and then adoption of the schemes can be reconsidered, where one would see that efficiencies can be improved in the stages of the process from preparation, from request of a scheme to preparation of the scheme, and finally adoption of the scheme, which nowadays is done through an implementing act. Another aspect that we would be looking at and also looking forward to hearing your views concerns the predictability of the process. How can one, improve the clarity on what is foreseen, but also ensuring flexibility, because we are talking about a very fast evolving environment in cybersecurity, as we see nowadays, also wider geopolitical aspects, security needs, also technology developments. So how could one consider this while providing more predictability of what can be prepared in terms of schemes, or what the needs are, and how can one respond to these needs? So what do you see as best ways to improve this predictability of the processes, and what is planned ahead? Another aspect on which we will be which we'll be analyzing and looking forward to hearing your views concerns the roles of various actors throughout the process of requesting, preparing, and adopting certification schemes. So various institutions, of course, we're talking here about the Commission, but also ENISA, but also role of various stakeholders who might be involved in the process, or where one could see improvements as compared to how the process goes today. So how clear the roles are, how well allocated they are, where one could see various players having their roles improved. Or maybe further clarified, or what stages, what particular roles one would assess in what manner. Another aspect to look at in this process is involvement of stakeholders, and how meaningful that the environment and the setting for involvement of various stakeholders is ensured today, and how can one see further improvements on how meaningful input from stakeholders at the right time in the process and more effective times in the process could be provided, and in what form, in what manner, in what kind of involvement, and what would be the most efficient setting to get this input. And finally, of course, there can be wider aspects. So these are just trying to mention some main strands, let's say, of thinking of areas where we would be looking at. It's the adaptability and suitability of the current framework in interplay with other pieces of legislation, but also technology realities, security needs, and so on. So here we have in mind, for example, how much legislative initiative and now a regulation in force, such as the Cyber Resilience Act, has changed this setting, and how could one fit better in the future, certification frameworks, at least when it comes to ICT products, but also for other coverage like ICT services, processes, and managed security services. How would this fit better in the future the overall framework that we have on cybersecurity, including more recent additions such as product security framework on CRA, but not only. There are also other pieces of legislation even beyond the interplay of cybersecurity that would have, let's say, an impact on how one would look at the needs for scheme and how would these complement each other. But definitely CRA is one of the big novelties that were brought to the framework that may also influence the way one would conceive and consider in the future the development of schemes and then how this contributes to supply chain security. So if I am to wrap up the main aspects, where we would expect to hear from you, but of course you can complement and also provide your views on more than that, would be the scoping of the certification framework, how this covers, how clear it is nowadays, and are there any other needs in that respect from what you see from the current ongoing processes. The process as a whole, the stages of this process, how efficient, how agile this is, how can one improve efficiency of that, the predictability of what it's coming, and how would one look at the needs for future schemes, and how would this fit the actual needs that one has in the cybersecurity, and also in interplay with all the other aspects that are relevant for cybersecurity, the roles of various actors throughout this process, the involvement of stakeholders, of various stakeholders, and how can this be improved, and the adaptability of the framework in interplay with other pieces of legislation or frameworks such as the CRA, but not only, and how could the added value of certification schemes be further increased and ensured. So those are more or less, around the building blocks that we are looking at for reflections for the future. And with this, because Matusz is in the room, maybe he can be the one as actually provides also better the interface on spot through your reaction to channel your feedback and also have a dialogue on that. So with this, I will pass the floor back to Matusz, and really looking forward to your views and input and suggestions for this process.
Thank you very much, Raluca, for your presentation. So before I leave the floor to you, because indeed we are interested in hearing your views more than anything else. Just to say that also hearing some very insightful panels from the previous sessions, there is already some of these aspects were already mentioned, but do not be afraid to repeat. Now it's the time we are taking a very good note of your feedback. So please go ahead. And at the same time, I would like to remind you of some of the housekeeping rules. So I believe there's going to be a microphone in the room, so you can raise your hand, and then when you get the microphone, please state your name and your affiliation, and we are happy to hear from you.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Raluca, for the overview. I realize this section focuses on the feedback that you've gotten through the certification framework in the last few years, but can you give us some peeks and insights on what else will be reviewed in the CSA?
Excuse me, what else or who else?
No, what else will be included in the CSA when it comes out, that goes beyond the certification framework? And also, have there been discussions how ENISA will be funded to be able to keep up with this heavy increase in certification?
I believe I leave the question to you, Raluca. Please go ahead.
Yes, okay, so we take questions one by one. I was just... Well, in terms of process, just to say without disappointing you that, I cannot prejudge what will be at the end of this process. So, of course, like for any revision, that there is a well-set process, which will entail also public consultations, impact assessment. So I cannot, predict right now what the final outcome would be of the CSA revision. But just to say that as it is obvious since Cybersecurity Act covers the mandate of ENISA and the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework, so would be looking at all these aspects of the CSA. And as I mentioned, as part of the digital package, as it was also announced in the Commission work program, we are also looking across the board at simplification of cybersecurity legislation. So horizontal, sector-specific, we are looking now at mapping what type of obligations that are relevant for cybersecurity are on board, with the purpose to identify aspects that can be further simplified for implementation and make compliance easier for businesses. So we are looking at aspects of reporting obligations that are relevant for cybersecurity across the board, where one could simplify further, when one could look, for example, at single entry points and so on. So all these are in reflection, in the making. But more than that, I cannot anticipate, other than saying that we will be looking at the whole of the Cybersecurity Act, and as part of the digital package, also simplification of cybersecurity legislation to facilitate implementation and make it easier for businesses to comply with these obligations.
Thank you very much. Now, I believe Chloe has a question from the online chat.
Yeah, from online, and I will complete it a bit from a question I have myself too. Is about the process of the revision itself. How do you do it, and with who? Today we have this feedback session, and also someone online is asking about when is the process going to end and be published.
As I mentioned before, since we are talking about a revision, the usual process entails public consultations and impact assessment that would fit in a potential proposal for revision. These are just the standard procedures that we have for this. As it is mentioned in the Commission work program, the timing foreseen for this process for proposal on the revision is Q4. I cannot be more precise than that at this moment. What I can say that in terms of public consultation, we hope that this process will be ready to go for public consultation as soon as possible in the coming weeks. But let's see. I cannot really tell because we have also our own internal processes to prepare such consultations. So this is all I can say in terms of the process at this moment.
Thank you very much. Just to also complement that what is proposed in the Commission work program on the Q4. So that is indeed the proposal for the revision of the Cybersecurity Act. At the top of that, we also cannot really anticipate how long the negotiations of such proposal might then take. But thank you. And do we see more questions? Yes, please.
My question is related to the scope of the revision per se. So is it trying to resolve the interplay with the cybersecurity landscape, the legal landscape in the EU as a whole? Is it trying to resolve the interplay with the CRA? Or is it going to attempt to resolve the interplay of the CRA with other cybersecurity legislation and beyond? So is it like trying to provide a panacea solution to all the issues of troubleshooting of the cybersecurity, lack of cohesion in the EU, or is it just focusing on one aspect to the CRA or to specific legislation? Because I'm confused. Because we have the CRA, which is a piece of legislation that it already has issues about the interplay with other legislations, lack of clarifications, and I'm concerned whether we're going to see solutions through this process or there's going to be a parallel process for the CRA, lack of issues of troubleshooting and interplay. Thank you.
Before I pass the floor to Roka, can I ask you for your name and your association?
Konstantinos Tsurtos. I come from Cyprus. I'm an independent legal consultant.
Thank you. Rolka?
So, as I mentioned, the CSA revision will concern. Here we are talking in particular about certification, the cybersecurity certification framework, and of course, the other part of the CSA concerns the mandate of ENISA. So it is not about. It's not entirely clear, actually, from the question whether you refer of legal interplay of the CRA with other, but just to say that if there are any things that need to be further clarified other than the CRA, the regulation itself clarifies in terms of interplay, there will also be guidance that will be preparing the implementation of the CRA. But the CSA revision will not look into the CRA framework. It is about, looking at the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework. The other part that it's part of the digital package, which includes CSA revision, it's a simplification of cybersecurity legislation, but that is also meant to simplify, to facilitate implementation. So it will look across the board of aspects that can facilitate compliance and implementation. It is not a reconsideration of the CRA as such, if that was the question. So, and I hope that the interplay of CRA, it's clear through the regulation itself, but really looking forward to hearing what particular particular interplay aspects you have in mind where you think that further clarity is needed. And just to say that for the implementation of the CRA as such, there will be guidance through the implementation processes. Now we are in a transitional period for the CRA. As you know, the regulation is in force, and it will apply for its core obligation in 3 years' time almost, so December 2027. And in the meantime, we will be preparing also with guidance this implementation process. So just to go back to this, any clarifications about CRA implementation will go in this process of preparing the implementation of the CRA, including guidance or clarifications provided if needed. If there are questions about this, so please let us know. But the CSA revision looks at what CSA covers, mandate of ENISA and Cybersecurity Certification Framework, and that would go together with the simplification of cybersecurity legislation, which look into facilitating compliance and simplifying implementation. I hope it's clear.
Thank you very much. Do we have more questions in the room at this time? I don't see any right now, so let me give you one more question, which would be that since, as also our Director General mentioned, we have this unique opportunity where the whole certification community gets together. So we really have, in one room, we have the member states, we have ENISA, we have the now accredited CAPs and laboratories, and also all the experts from the industry. So we are also wondering, how do you see your role in this whole framework evolving in the upcoming years? What do you think works well? What does not work well? What are the harder parts that you're dealing with and you would like us to work on?
Things work well.
I guess we are doing a great job now. All right.
So we have two questions. So one question is again, and the person says sorry to ask again, but it seems that the evaluation of the CSA is not in the Commission work program. So is it a process aside of it, or yeah?
Yes, I believe Raluca was already mentioning that what is in the Commission work program as it was adopted is the digital package. So, and as part of this digital package, also mentioned in the morning by a Director General, will be also the revision of the Cybersecurity Act. So you will not find a column for Cybersecurity Act, but that's because it's part of this broader solution, this broader package.
Perfect. Any question on that? Or
I see a question there.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Goran Otto from Ruth Pedersen Public Affairs, European consultancy firm. Just a question. I mean, obviously, throughout, the evolution of the certification framework with the entry into effect of the Cybersecurity Act, we've had new structures being formed. One of them is the European Cybersecurity Certification Group, which is the member states forum, where basically the bulk of the sort of the process of defining and adopting a scheme is being made, and then basically is being pushed back to the Commission for an implementing act. And you also have the stakeholder certification group and the ad hoc groups for each specific scheme. In terms of your own assessment as European Commission and, based on your conversations with stakeholders and member states, have you identified potentially some things that you would want to, or you would consider potentially could be fine-tuned in the revision of the CSA, in for instance, either making those processes potentially a bit more, either like, fast-tracked, or, having, a stronger collaboration between the stakeholder working groups and the ECCG, or do you think it's sort of a, for the time being, you don't see any major challenges there? Just out of curiosity, I mean, picking up your views, and obviously if there is any other reactions from the room, would be happy to hear from other people. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any immediate reactions, so I pass the floor to Raluca.
Yes, I mean, I would have more questions to you than answer at this point on this one. I can only say that indeed, I mean, when I was mentioning that we are looking at processes and how effective they are, and also involvement of stakeholders, of course, throughout this process, we will be also looking how effective the current structures, as you mentioned, have been for the process as such, and how stakeholders also from their end, member states, but also industry and other find how this meaningful in the current format and efficient. So we will be looking at that. I don't have the answers yet of what would be a potential need for improvement of that, because we will also looking forward to receiving input, including through upcoming public consultations, but also any other thoughts or submissions that will be coming in events like this one, but not only. But the only thing I can say that indeed, as part of assessing, how effective these processes have been and the current structure setting, we would also be looking at what one can further improve to ensure a more efficient, agile, and meaningful participation of stakeholders throughout this process. So we'll also, returning this question to you, whether you see, any aspects that in the current setting could be further improved, or, what would be the views on the end of the stakeholders on ECCG, SCG, the current structures, and how the input in the whole process is working right now.
I see two questions now, please.
So Roland Thuy, Red Alert Labs. We are a French cab. Hopefully, it's going to be announced for the EUCC. My question would be a bit, related to, because it would be like a question, but also actually a reflection. But because you're asking about what would be actually potentially gonna be the next steps for affecting the Cybersecurity Act. I think probably did you have any latest reflections about AI and how actually that might impact the Cybersecurity Act itself, the framework? I'm saying not just actually the study, for example, of how EUCC could certify AI products or things like that. I'm really thinking much higher level, where we are looking right now into directions such as that sits at the assurance level, where, for example, AI could bring, in addition to for example, self-assessment, and that sits between something that is, self-assessed and something that is third-party assessed. One of the things, other things, it's really about AI products that are there. Our products, as defined in Cybersecurity Act, englobes AI products, or this is actually a new kind of product, I would say, right? It's an ICT product. So those things, do you have any latest, let's say, reflections on that? I would be interested to know about.
Yes, Rolka, please.
Yes, I can't say right now that they have been very targeted. If I understand correctly, it's more about, it's not necessarily about interplay of a scheme with AI framework as such, but rather, so maybe you can further clarify that. If I understand correctly, more how the AI setting currently can influence the use of frameworks, or for certain assurance level for particular potential schemes on ICT products. Is this the question, or?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, right? Because the question is really general, right? So if I take thus the AI applications today, how indeed the question could be asked, how AI would affect this framework today, okay? And the other way around, of course, whether the framework should be adjusted to AI products, right? To complement to the AI Act, and of course to the different schemes that we have today.
First of all, we will take this with us in our reflections. Just to say that, the objective would be to ensure that one has a framework that has enough flexibility for certification, but also that would have the necessary, let's say, setting requirements, objectives that makes it effective. Maybe one would not go into this level of detail when looking at that, but these are elements that should be considered in how to build up a scheme that would be flexible enough, yet clearly set in terms of scope, its workings and processes. And the impact of AI on how would one, build, for example, as you mentioned, the assurance level, or how the scheme would be built up, would be something that maybe indeed we should look more into. So we'll be taking this with us and then reflecting. But just to say that ultimately, when one look at the revision, you have to look at how the framework would work adaptable for all potential coverage that it would have on products or services or processes, and how we have managed security services, and allow the right amount of clarity and set in the framework, yet the flexibility that would also take into account how these things will evolve in the future, including the impact of AI as such. And then there is the other part that I was also asking, was it more about how AI would influence the way one would look at the cybersecurity objectives for any other product, and how would you see the assurances? And I get that, this is part of it, but also then there is the other aspect, which is more legal framework oriented, of how the schemes as such can complement and support the implementation of other frameworks, as it is the case of AI Act, but also other legislation where certification, cybersecurity certification could support, of course, from the security angle, the implementation of other frameworks, product specific or sector specific or services specific.
Thank you very much. I see another question in the room, please.
Hi, Angel Moreno Rubio from TIC Council. I have more than a question, a clarification, if I may. So you said that in the coming weeks you will publish a first public consultation to receive feedback.
That is very tentative, just to jump on that. So I cannot give you any precise time frame. And was just saying that in this process, I hope that that the public consultation would come rather soon.
Yeah, but my question is, whenever you publish this public consultation in the coming weeks, months, is it only related to the revision of the Cybersecurity Act, or more broadly of the overall digital package? Just to be prepared as a relevant stakeholder that we want to engage in this public consultation. So yeah, that clarification, if it's only related to the revision of the Cybersecurity Act, or more broadly the digital package, which may include other things as well. Thank you.
So, in principle, it's CSA revision, and as it was mentioned, also as part of the Commission work program, simplification. But again, I'm just saying this with a lot of disclaimers, since we are still having internal processes ongoing in preparation of this. So, it is not yet, final. So you will learn when the process will be ready for public consultation.
Thank you very much for the question. I see another one in the room. Please go ahead.
Hi, Rafał Kłosek from Microsoft. I wanted to ask about the voluntary nature of the certification. Is this something the Commission is looking into reevaluating? Would there be possibility of thinking about mandatory regulation, whether more broadly or under any kind of like sectoral or vertical areas?
So can I also ask whether there are any thoughts about this on your end, to understand, also the angle from which the question is coming? Meaning, is it the question whether there is any intention to turn the certification framework into other than voluntary? Is this the question,
Yeah, that's part of the question. There is also, the other aspect where the certification can be made mandatory, under other regulations like CRA and AS2. I was just, having in mind like a general question, that was also, part of the discussion back in the day around CSA. Is this something the Commission is looking into and thinking about reevaluating?
So first, like for all the other questions, to clarify that this is a process that we will have to follow up to, a point where a revision proposal would come. So nothing is decided, and we are still having ongoing reflections. But just to say that, in itself, the way the certification, so we are just, having these preliminary discussions now, but I think that the setting of voluntary scheme in a framework, it's one of the fundamentals of what we have in the cybersecurity framework setting as such. Whenever, so there are other pieces of legislation like the CRA or for example, and you mentioned also NIS2, which provide possibilities under certain circumstances to potentially mandate for a certain use a certain scheme for a very, targeted, dedicated use or in relation to specific products that are qualified in a certain way from a cybersecurity point of view. This being said, I mean that the format as a whole is that the schemes in itself are, of course, voluntary as part of this certification framework, while whenever there is a need that it needs to be justified in a certain way, in a certain context, that one could also have the possibility in that context to, if the legislation provides for the right instruments, to mandate a scheme. But the nature of the cybersecurity certification framework and these schemes is really linked to this voluntary nature and the build-up of it and the added value that also the voluntary schemes would have. That is the build-up of the CSA. So I think that these mechanics that we are having right now, meaning cybersecurity certification framework for voluntary schemes, and whenever in a specific context another piece of legislation mentions it can provide in certain context under certain conditions the possibility to mandate for a certain user for certain products which are qualified in different ways. It's something that I would say that maybe it is not necessarily considered for a fundamental change, because it would be going in a different direction to build up something that it's mandatory from the onset for certification schemes. And now the way the whole framework it's constructed, I mean, we have CRA, which is a regulation of direct application mandating cybersecurity requirements on products. For NIS2, you have services which are also, recipients of certain services, supply chain, and so on, that can, in certain instances, use certain certification for certain purposes of different levels and of different different levels of assurance required and different needs for specific uses in certain critical environments. So just to say that this is the mechanics of how that one would complement each other. So one would have to, when you need to mandate a scheme, you have to have a specific context with a certain use, with a certain process, a certain qualification of cybersecurity needs for that particular purposes, while one would have a framework as a whole where schemes are voluntary and can bring added value in particular context from cybersecurity point of view.
Do we have any more questions in the room? I see Ruud.
Thank you. My name is Ruud Kessels and I'm working at the Dutch NCCA. I have a question. If we look at the Cybersecurity Act, the background is in fact more product related as concepts that are addressed in it. We have now the experience of one scheme, EUCC, which provides a long list of things that we can improve for the Cybersecurity Act. We have now dealt with an extension of the Cybersecurity Act intermediate with introducing the managed security services. That brings up the question about services part. Services require another perspective on the perspective of cybersecurity, because it's not a determined object that doesn't change, but a continuous change, and ask also from a certification perspective, maybe different approach. So it's interesting to know, of understand and hear how this is then involved in the update of the CSA, so that it can provide elements that we can use for the services part, which are now not specifically addressed in the CSA itself.
Before I lend the floor to Raluca, I think this is just to say that this is a very important reflection. I think it also somehow connects to one of the previous questions or one of the previous reflections, because as you mentioned yourself, services require a bit of a different approach to certification. One of these aspects could be, for example, continuous compliance, how you can look into these aspects. Potentially, of course, taking into account the security of AI, that could be one of the approaches that could be considered. But with that, I lend the floor back to Raluca.
No, I mean, I would also, not be more elaborate than just saying that indeed this is an important question to reflect on. So I would have, more reply in the direction that, to be reflected, and definitely something that, one would reflect on. I think it's correct to say that indeed in the way the current framework is conceived was more, that's why I was also mentioning in my introduction and, trying to also hear the thoughts from you, was more built on this idea of looking at products indeed and certification of products. And then we had the Cyber Resilience Act coming, which also changes a bit the dynamics, because that is a regulation that introduces, that mandates cybersecurity requirements on hardware and software. And then for services, indeed, like you mentioned, and when of course we had the amendment on managed security services, and one is to see now with those, how one would build also the scheme for managed security services. But also, wider reflections on how the framework and the scoping, and that's what I was also saying in my introduction, can be further clarified and adapted, maybe in terms of scope and how it covers, and how can, for example, for provision of services, indeed, can one think of certification. So, yeah, it's a very valid point, and we are reflecting on that, and any suggestions and then the reflections on that would be more than welcome. Just to say also process-wise that, of course, part of these processes are public consultations, but any submissions or thoughts from your side to the Commission are always welcome, throughout this process. If you have particular proposals or aspects that you want to point us to, that we need to look at throughout this process more thoroughly.
Thank you. So I believe we are nearing or have already achieved the end of our time. But so any final reflections? I believe there is one thing online and one thing in the room.
Yeah, so online the question is about how to address SMEs. So the first version of the CSA and certification mentioned a lot the access to certification for SMEs. I believe the question is about making it mandatory for SME services. But did you update the approach you have on certification for SMEs and to support them to start with it?
Maybe before we move to the answer, let's also take the last reflection, please. Do we have a microphone?
Hi, Roxana Albistanu from AWS. Sorry to have also a question and not input or feedback. Can we expect before the start of the revision process to see a evaluation report of the CSA and how the certification framework has worked so far? Thank you.
Maybe just a quick reflection from my side when it comes to the role of SMEs and the benefits that the certification framework would or could have to SMEs. I think one of the important aspects for SMEs is that European cybersecurity certificates will be recognized across the EU, and this is something that that is really should be allowing SMEs to provide products, services in the future seamlessly across the European Union. So I believe that once we achieve a bit more the simplification, improve the effectiveness of the framework, that inherently will also improve the ability of SMEs and will support SMEs. But with that, I leave the rest to Raluca.
Yes, thanks. But indeed, I mean, not much to add on SMEs. I mean, I'm not sure I understood the full question about mandating certification to SMEs. So that was a bit puzzling. I don't know whether it read that way or I understood it correctly.
We don't have a follow-up.
But definitely, sorry, yeah. But definitely what also Matus was saying, also for certification framework, it's more, to an instrument that can bring added value in showing that there is compliance with certain cybersecurity objectives and measures, which can also help smaller players and in showing that they comply with these requirements at a certain assurance level. We would definitely, be very open to look if there are any other particular suggestion of how can one support more SMEs, because this is one of the focuses that we have in implementation of our cybersecurity framework across the board. Also for other regulations, implementation of the NIS2 framework, CRA, and also certification framework. So would be more than happy to see more suggestions, other than supporting through funding, helping, with facilitating compliance and this kind of support measures that one can provide. If you can, think of any other measures one can look at of how to support SMEs in implementing and following cybersecurity frameworks. And then on the processes, I think we're also expecting, a lot of ideas coming to us rather than all the questions about the process. I can only repeat that the process is ongoing. There are certain, aspects I cannot give more details about, other than that it will follow, this course of public consultation, impact assessment, and then, as you have seen in the Commission work program, a package which is foreseen for Q4 of this year. And throughout this process, you would also, see the various stages being accomplished, and then maybe you'll get, you'll get to see how the process evolves. And also your involvement as stakeholders in giving us feedback, input, response to public consultations. But any others, I said, any other submissions on your side and thoughts of what you believe we should be looking at with the digital package and the CSA revision.
Thank you very much. So, not to steal more away from your well-deserved break, I would then thank Raluca for all the answers and reflections on the reflections, and I hope that that this session has raised your appetite for the future vision and makes you think about what you would like to see there, so that then you are ready once ultimately the consultation package is published. And this is more of a little bit of a homework for you to think about think about that and be ready for that. And I see that Chloe.
No, great. It was just on the follow-up, so okay. Good. So if you have more questions or feedback, because the Commission is really expecting for feedback. So let's follow the. I guess you will publish it. Where will the public call published?
Yes. So on that one we can. You should have a look at Have Your Say. That's a website where we publish our consultation documents, so refreshing that one and you will not miss it.
Okay, and we will try as well, Enisa, to at least the certification you need to post on it, so to make sure we don't miss that opportunity. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks, Raluca. So now we have a break. And we'll have a coffee break until 4:10.